These are those moments where you get snappy, right? And it can start out of frustration or that you're overwhelmed. You can easily get snappy. When you're feeling pressured, you can easily get snappy. When you think that you know best and you're not being listened to, you can get snappy. When you've had to repeat yourself a cajillion times, you can get snappy. Like, it's natural. These are human things, human emotions. But then we have to say, okay, what am I going to do when I feel that I'm getting frustrated, overwhelmed, or anything that's going to cause me to be snappy and I become destructive versus constructive? You need to have a plan in place for that. We're going to talk about that a little later. Welcome to another unapologetic mommy moment inside of the mommyhood.
You caught me in the act.
Mommy Moments. This episode is sponsored by Thrive After 9, a community and support system for moms who are coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs supporting each other in a positive, safe, judgment-free zone of other like-minded women getting things done to thrive in your home and business. To find out more, go to www.thriveafter9.com. Hello. Welcome. You're tuned in to Mommy Moments, a segment of Unapologetically Mommyhood, where we focus on things that every mom can relate to, use, and apply to thrive in their home and business. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about relationships. This is more specifically the relationships that we create with our children from start to finish, right? And one of the things that really affects our relationship with our children is being constructive versus being destructive. And what I'm going to start out with first, before I hop into the topic, is I'm going to just give you the definition of those words. So the definition of constructive is serving a useful purpose. Serving a useful purpose. The definition of destructive is causing great and irreparable harm or damage. Causing great and irreparable harm or damage. And the reason why I started with the definition is I believe that words' actual meanings are important versus how we use them or what we think they are. Sometimes what we think the word is and what we use it for is different from what the word actually means. So that's why I like to start with the definition. So I brought up this topic for two reasons. One, on a previous podcast episode, it sparked my intrigue when we talked about giving our child real helpful feedback, meaning speaking to them in a way that they can receive it in their love language, right? We talked about love languages on that episode versus how you want to give the feedback because that's how you feel or because that's how you give feedback. And so in doing that, you are being destructive versus constructive when you give them feedback the way you want to because that's how you want to, but it's not in a way where they're feeling loved, supported, and helped. Remember, the definition of constructive is serving a useful purpose, right? And your useful purpose should be to build them up, help them in a way that they need, right? And being destructive is actually the opposite, where you're causing harm or damage, and sometimes you don't even know that you're doing it, right? So being constructive is giving information in a helpful manner, while being destructive is what it sounds like. You're providing help that's going to cause damage. It's exactly what it sounds like, right? And sometimes we may not notice it right away. We think that we're helping, right? But we're really hurting a situation or person by serving ourselves instead of giving them what they need. And you might be saying, what is serving yourself? I'm glad you asked. So serving yourself can be any of these options. It can be having to get your point across. We do that sometimes. We have to talk and get our point across. Then comparing, when I was a child, this is what happened and this is what we did. Or such and such's child does this, but you do that. Comparing, right? Using triggers, things that you know are triggers and you know cause some friction or adversity between you and your child, and you do it anyway, right? Sometimes it's out of anger, frustration, or just not thinking in the moment. You're hot in the moment, you blow up, using no triggers. Imposing your will, meaning making them do what you think they should be doing, even if it's not good for them, it doesn't match who they are, it doesn't match their personality, it doesn't match their behaviors, but it's what you want. It's not what they want, it's what you want, right? And enforcing what you think. That's another part of imposing your will, enforcing what you think. Oh, I think this. Guess what? They are not you. They, for one, are not a grown person. They're not an adult, so they're not going to think the way you think. So first you have to think that this is a child. They're still developing. Their mind is still developing. So what I think is going to be completely different from what they think because, for one, they're not you. And two, they're not thinking in the same manner as you because they're not at that level. And then there's so much more. There are so many more ways that you could be serving yourself versus really helping them. And serving yourself is destructive, not constructive. Right? So how does it start? So when we're talking about it starting up, right? These are those moments where you get snappy, right? And it can start out of frustration or that you're overwhelmed. You can easily get snappy. When you're feeling pressured, you can easily get snappy. When you think that you know best and you're not being listened to, you can get snappy. When you've had to repeat yourself a cajillion times, you can get snappy. Like, it's natural. These are human things, human emotions. But then we have to say, okay, what am I going to do when I feel that I'm getting frustrated, overwhelmed, or anything that's going to cause me to be snappy and I become destructive versus constructive? You need to have a plan in place for that. We're going to talk about that a little later. Okay, so first we're going to take a little look at being constructive. So one way that we can look at constructive is providing feedback that will improve the situation, right? So when you're providing this feedback is you want to focus on the positivity. And the way that you can do that is you're going to provide positivity by focusing on what went right in the situation or with that person versus focusing on only went wrong. You're going to start with what you did right. I love how you did this and you're getting so much better at this. You've done it so much better than last time. This is amazing, right? Start with the constructive. And then when you want to move on to but, the word but, and be very sparing with the word, but this you can work on, right? We want to be constructive with it. Like, I love how you made that letter. That letter looks amazing. But we're going to work on this one a little bit. We're going to work on this one so I can get just as amazing as that one. You did it was beautiful though. You're going to get a star for that, right? We want to focus on the positivity, or the better thing to do in focusing on the positivity is don't even mention the negative or the what's wrong in the same moment. You can do that as well. You can say, oh, look, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. I like what you did here. Like, you're getting so much better at this, right? And focus on the positivity in that moment. And when you are done with the positivity, and you can come back in another moment and say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Can you take a look at this? This is what's going on. And it depends on the age of the child as well, right? So you want to praise them for what's right. You don't want to always talk about and focus on what's wrong. So that is a part of being constructive. Now we're going to talk a little bit about destructive. And destructive feedback is when you provide information based on what you think versus what occurred. So it's very damaging to provide information based on just what you think and not what occurred, because what you think happened in their mind is not what happened. So here is where you can start with a little constructive thoughts and constructive questioning, right? You can ask them, so when you did this, why did you do that? Or what were you thinking when you did this? Or can you explain to me what you were doing? Like, just to get a little more context to what was happening. Because sometimes we jump to conclusions, right? Not just with children, with anything. We'll jump to a conclusion before we clarify and find out what was actually going on. And when you jump to a conclusion, right, and assume, they say you make a what? out of you and me, or you and them, right? So you just want to ask some questions, and don't ask them in an angry tone, because you're probably not going to get an answer if you do that. And don't ask them in a condescending tone. Just be very neutral and ask questions about what just happened in the moment, or what happened at a moment that you felt like something was wrong, right? And you want to add some corrective behavior. You want to add some corrective behaviors, right? So ask questions. Like, sometimes as adults, we feel like we don't have to ask kids questions, that we can just say and do whatever we want, and all they have to do is listen. But they are little humans. Like, you don't want anyone telling you, like, you just got to listen, right? Anybody in authority over you, if someone is an authority over you, if they came to you and was like, you just have to listen, you can't say nothing, you would feel some type of way about that. Especially when, if everything they're saying is wrong, right? And it's not exactly what happened, and you want to clarify and clear things up. Same thing with your child. You want to ask some questions, let them clear it up so you can fully understand what was happening. And if your child is a certain age and they can't explain to you what was happening, then you want to start to pay more attention to the behaviors and pay more attention to what's happening, so that you then can go back and say, okay, this is what they do when this happens, or this is what happens when they do this, so that you can be more aware and more informed that they can't speak to you yet, right? And another part of destructive feedback is that when you focus on the negative, what was done wrong, then they're going to start expecting you to only be condescending towards them. They're going to expect you to only come to them when they're doing something wrong, or come to them with what they're doing wrong, that's going to hinder your relationship. So another form of destructive feedback is your tone, right? I talked a little bit about this previously, but it's your tone. Angry, yelling, frustration. Those things happen. I told you, it's natural. Like, we are humans, we have emotions, and these are natural emotions. To feel angry, frustrated, and to yell is even a natural behavior. But sometimes we have to check our tones when we want to be constructive. Even though we're in a heated situation, we're hot, something's going on, we're bothered, we still need to make sure that we're going to get out of the situation what we need to get out of the situation. If you go into it in an angry tone, you're going to have your child is going to be shutting down. You're not going to be able to get the information from them, and you're just going to get more frustrated, and you're just going to get more angry, because now you can't get anything out of them, and you're going to then think, okay, now they're ignoring me, or they're not talking to me, or they're being disrespectful, when they're just shutting down because of the tone. Most people don't like to be yelled at. Kids like to be yelled at even less. Okay, so you may have to take a step back and pause so that you can come forward in more positivity. So take a minute, pause, come back after the anger has passed. So destructive feedback affects your child negatively, even though it may not show up right away. So the effects may not show up right away. It may show up later, and it'll show up in their behaviors, their relationships with you, and how they communicate and interact with others. So it doesn't just affect their relationship with you, it also affects their relationship with others and how they communicate and interact with other people, the way that they're learning from you, right? Because they are soaking up all this information and knowledge from the people that are around them the most, right? And so if you are consistently being destructive, and sometimes you don't know it, so it's no judgment, it's just being more aware of how you approach the situation or the little people, right? Because again, they are watching us, and they are going to mock us, or they are going to do exactly what we do, right? So it'll show up in their behaviors, again, their relationship with you, and their communication and interaction with other people. So to combat this, I'm just going to say that focus on becoming more self-aware and take adult timeouts, because it's important. So taking that pause is like an adult timeout. Put yourself in timeout so that you can get back into the right headspace, so that you can be loving and constructive versus destructive. And I'm going to say that again. And again, it's no judgment because, again, we're all humans. We all do it. We all go through it. But sometimes we have to take that step back, right? Focus on being more aware of your triggers and what causes it, and being more aware of how you approach the situation, be more aware of your words, be more aware of how your child receives information, be more aware of your child's love language, and actually taking intentional action to focus and give them the things they need in the way that they need it, meaning in their love language, and take some adult time outs so you can get back into that right headspace so that you can be loving and constructive versus destructive. So, thank you for listening today. You've been tuned in to another Mommy Moments, a segment of Unapologetically Mommyhood, and I will talk to you next time.